A few things. Thanks to everyone for giving the time to this activity this afternoon. Any feedback that you have that you want to give the farmer advocate or the facilitator sitting at your table, we're interested to hear what you have to say. Because after this, they're going to be having another roundtable discussion with us, telling us how it all went. So let them know what you thought, what went well, what didn't go well. So really excited that Mitchell's going to continue his presentation and conversation, specifically getting into the Haney soil test, the directions for you, and then maybe we'll have some time to answer some of those questions that we got cut off with earlier today. So thank you, Mitchell.
Yeah, you guys are stuck with me again. So hopefully you enjoyed the break away from having to hear me babble. But I think a pretty cool opportunity here. As Stephanie was getting the event going and getting me brought in, she's like, well, hey, I've got some of this grant money to do some testing and stuff in this this Haney test thing. What do you know about that? And I was like, well, I've got the largest private data set and built a software company where we do this stuff in 42 states and 20 countries. So yeah, definitely all for helping out. So everybody that attends, Stephanie's got some certificates and stuff to get everybody at least 2 free Haney tests. And I want to just kind of explain a little bit on how to go about it. We've heard a couple different speakers here saying, I've kind of tried that Haney test thing, but I don't know how to read it. I don't know how to use it. And that's where we want to help out. But go ahead, Stephanie.
So I had originally put on the registration that farmer registrants receive it, but if you are a resource professional and you would like to use the Haney soil test with either a farmer that you're working with, that's available to you. And I wanted to interject just so pay attention because you're getting the certificate too if you want it.
Or you could use it on your garden or in your flower bed or something like that. Okay, so a couple things to preface this. Number one, as you're doing these and as you're going about this project here, we want to work with your local agronomist. Whether work with your local folks, work with your local crop consultant, agronomist, guys at the ag retail outlet, whatever that may be. I don't want to come back to Ohio to pull soil samples all the time, Nathan. No, yeah, it ain't going to happen. I'm not going to pull the soil samples anyway, even if we have to come. I've got my people do that. I pulled 3 soil samples this year, though. I thought that was pretty good. But, and they were in Arkansas, so I was like, ugh, and I survived.
You're getting too cushy.
Yeah, I am getting too cushy. Don't feel my hands are all soft and oily now, lotioned up. But, okay, so a couple soil tests, work with your local people. We can send them, I'd prefer to send them to either Brookside Labs here in Ohio or to the Regen Ag Lab. If you've got a different preferred lab, I need to just look and make sure that they're doing it kind of at the standard that we want. The Haney test is relatively new. It's been around for only 15 years. And there's only a couple labs that are really doing it at the level of accuracy that I want to make sure that you guys are getting good data and make sure we put Stephanie's money to work correctly, okay? So a couple different things on this. 2 tests. My recommendation would be that we do these samples in the springtime. The key with the Haney test is it shows you your farm's current assets. Jeremiah was talking about it before. It's your farm's current assets. What is available at the time that you pull these samples? Well, when do we most care about what's available? Well, in the spring when we're actually trying to grow something. Our typical malic extraction or the typical sampling that you've done is fine. Over time, we used to do a lot of both, and now we've weaned ourselves completely off of it. And with all of our customers and stuff, we do only Haney testing. We didn't do any traditional analysis at all here this year on any of our stuff. The traditional analysis shows you what could come available in the next growing season. It uses a really strong acid that has a pH of 2.4, basically to bust apart all of the chemical bonds in the soil and show you what should come available. And then with the university fertilizer trials, they've calibrated to, okay, well, how much fertilizer should you put on? The inverse with the Haney test is it shows you what is available right now. The acid that we use is the H3A extraction developed by Dr. Rick Haney. It is plant root exudates, essentially. Okay, plants breathe in CO2, convert it into simple sugars, and pump up to 70% of that into the soil to feed the microbes. And those simple sugars, those simple plant root exudates are what we utilize in the lab to evaluate what's available in the soil. We also utilize water because it still rains water. So we use water. What this shows is what is readily available in the soil. What we do then is we say, okay, well, what's your crop and what's your yield goal? And we utilize the university need, because we still need the nutrients to produce the crop. No matter if you're doing regenerative or organic or conventional systems, it doesn't matter. Your crop still is going to need those nutrients. When we get the sample back from the lab, this shows what is readily available in your soil. And then we take a look at how much do you need in total. Here's what's available in the soil. And we fill in the gap with the fertilizer. The key with the Haney test is it's not only looking at the inorganic nutrients like we're used to. It also looks at the organic nutrients. The biggest thing that we've seen on our farm as we've really gotten intense at using these and as we've pushed down this regen path is that more and more of our nutrients come available in the organic form. Okay, for an example on that, a couple years ago when we had that bad cover crop experience that I was showing the pictures on before, our soils were about 90% inorganic nutrients, okay? We don't have manure. We had been doing some no-till, but hadn't been doing cover crops. Our soils were not in a good biological position. Jeremiah, I think, had I think that test that you had before was one of our soils from early on, and the score was a 12. The biological activity wasn't even 100. The water extractable carbon was in the low category. This is a year or two after. This is a fall of 2020 sample is what it says up in the upper right. And so this would be after, 4 years of cover crops or so at this point. And what we're looking at here is now our soils are very organic dominant. Okay, and let me go through this just real quick so that you guys can kind of see how I read one of these tests. And then when we get them from your farm, we'll sit down, or I've got my folks, and we'll sit down and help you and help your local agronomists to figure out what does this mean for your operation, okay? But just real quick, how I look at this when I'm reading these is number one, in the upper left-hand corner, it says IR gas analyzer, 149.6. That is the infrared gas analyzer that evaluates CO2 burst, biological activity. Microbes breathe out CO2 just like we do. The longer we've been in this room, the CO2 concentration in this room has gone up. Okay? And if we all ran around, we're breathing heavy, it'd go up even faster. Okay? Microbes breathe, they don't actually breathe, they don't have lungs, but they respire back out CO2 just like we do. Okay, in my presentation before, I skipped over some of the carbon stuff, and to bring it back full circle, I was talking at the beginning that all these companies are wanting to do low carbon stuff, there's all these carbon credit things and all that. Carbon offset credits, where you check a box and add a new practice, is not going to be the major driver of the future. The major driver of the future is going to be based on carbon intensity. What is your actual annual carbon footprint and your actual contribution, net bottom line, to the next guy's carbon footprint? Your actual carbon intensity is what will end up being reported into the supply chain. Just a real quick story on that. Corn has a standard carbon intensity of plus 35. Okay, and this is the ethanol standard, plus 35 grams of CO2 equivalents per megajoule of energy. It's about 1.6 tons per acre per year lost. That's nitrous oxide from the fertilizer, carbon from the soil, fuel, energy, LP, all that kind of stuff. Plus 35. We just got our preliminary scores back, and it's what I've got to work on tomorrow. I'm meeting up with some guys working on our score. Our preliminary results is we are minus 1.8 carbon negative. So like I was saying, not only being able to offset our own carbon footprint, but now when we sell our grain into the supply chain and they mix it with the others, now it's carbon negative to lower the actual environmental impact of that product as it goes into the supply chain. And I love this because the better we do, the more we're going to be able to get paid. because the better we do, the more we contribute to their carbon footprint, and it makes our grain really valuable. It also incentivizes production, and the better you do, the more you get paid. Capitalism. The further you do, the better your score, the more you get paid. Should drive supply and demand, should drive market opportunity in dollars. Back to our operation. That carbon cycling, okay, comes from plants breathing in. They don't have lungs either, but they take in CO2, convert it to simple sugars, pump most of it in the ground as those plant root exudates, and we can quantify that as the second line item, water extractable organic carbon. We've got to pump carbon down into the ground to feed these microbes. Microbes are simple critters, like I said, eat, reproduce, die. And what do they eat? They eat simple sugars. They need other compounds and stuff. They need to break down these nutrients that are in their soil to produce the enzymes to be able to get everything else that they need. But the core thing is the simple sugars. We can quantify that with water extractable organic carbon. To build your soil health, the first thing that gets added is that liquid carbon. As you're doing cover crops, as you're going and getting diversity, water extractable organic carbon is the first thing that we'll see increase. That's going to directly drive that first one, infrared gas analyzer, biological activity. We got to feed the microbes so that they have the food, they will respond, and the biological activity number in the upper left goes up. We can't just feed them carbon though. Just like when you're feeding the livestock, you can't only have energy, you got to have protein plus energy in a balanced ration. The protein for the microbes is a water extractable organic nitrogen. Okay, they have to have nitrogen, especially in the organic, readily available form, for them to build the enzymes to break down and eat that carbon. And as we put a bunch of carbon out into that soil, we got to make sure that we give them the tools that they need to be able to eat it all. In our first year, remember, we lost 20 bushel the acre, $100, because we didn't understand this metric. We put out our normal synthetic nitrogen. There wasn't the organic nitrogen there. Like I said, we were 90% inorganic at the beginning. That number, that water extractable organic number at the beginning for us, and the one that Jeremiah showed, it was like 10 part per million or less. Okay, and these are 6-inch samples, so 10 part per million is about 20 pounds per acre. Now we're consistently at 45 to now 60, 65 part per million, aka 100 or so pounds of organic nitrogen sitting out there available. Okay, we have to have that organic nitrogen to keep building up the biological activity, cycle nutrients, cycle the residue, get away from, I can't do no-till because I've got all this residue out there, I got to get rid of the residue. Our problem now is we can't keep residue. So we've had to, that's why we're doing all this planting green. I didn't even get into how we're planting cover crops now. It's a totally different story, but those four, and we have to have the carbon and the nitrogen in balance. That's that C to N ratio. We want it to be below 20. This one is actually probably too low. We got to keep getting more carbon into the system. Like I said, we're burning through it really, really quickly. Those four components are utilized to calculate the soil health score. A great score is 25. It's kind of the target. Out of all my samples that I've done, okay, so real quick on this. Biological activity, the upper left, a great target. Anything better than 100 is pretty darn good. I want it to be around 250 to 300. The best that I've ever seen is over 1,000. That was with hitting all the soil health principles and was freaking rocking and rolling. Water extractable organic carbon, anything better than 150 is pretty darn good. I want it to be at least 250 to 450. For water extractable organic nitrogen, anything better than 30 is pretty good. I want it to be more around that 50 to 60. And that soil health score, anything better than a 15 or so is pretty darn good. Would love to see it getting up to that 25 or so. The highest that I've seen is 60. That is cranking. Okay, real quick, on the right-hand side, we've got nitrate, ammonium, and our total inorganic nitrogen. Like I said, at the beginning, my nitrogen was only in those two forms. Now, 1.3 and not even detectable, less than 2 part per million. The standard that I was told at Iowa State was that our nitrate alone is supposed to be 35. We're at 2. but it's all in the biological form. All of our nutrients are out there. It's just in the organic form, and we had been missing that before. Now we see that. Now we can quantify that organic form, build it up as you go down this journey, and this really is able to help us to cut back on our nutrients because we're seeing that other pool that we were missing. Last kind of couple things here. I don't know if this is going. Maybe. Nope. Okay. How I like to do it anyway is based on zones. And one of the things I would recommend for these 2 samples that you get, do one from like in your field in a normal area, and do one from the edge of the field in a fence line, an undisturbed area, a native kind of area, so you can compare where are you versus kind of where's the natural system. It's a great comparison. Unless you have certain fields where you can compare one field or one system versus another. Like you have that one field you've been doing a bunch of no-till and cover crops on, and you have that other field that you haven't. That's great. Just something to compare against. Don't just do 2 samples from within the same field if there's no difference between them, because we use this to really learn something. So what I've done a bunch of trials and stuff on this, but what we do here as well is that we built the first software to be able to actually map all this stuff out, and that's what my company actually does. I have 25 employees. We help farmers to quantify and manage their soil health. Like I said, 42 states, 20 countries. We work with Rabobank, SIBO, Land O'Lakes, Bayer, Goldman Sachs, all these huge companies, trying to help them figure out what they should be doing in this space and helping their network and their portfolios. What we do is we map out the field, we bring in soil type, slope, elevation, whatever data that you've got, and we run machine learning on it. My chief technology officer, he's a Big 10 guy from University of Illinois, rather than us Big 12 guys. But we can run machine learning on this, look at the field spatial variability, and then we've automated the data flow between ourselves on the agronomy side and the lab. This is not crazy important for you guys in the stuff right now, just showing what we technically really do. But what I'm getting at and showing here is that when we get the result back, we don't just say, here's the lab analysis, have at it, like I was showing before. And we have to walk through it every single time, and I don't have enough hours in the day to be able to do that. And we keep hiring people on. But what's better is to be able to cross-compare to the benchmarks and to the calibrated system here that we've developed with thousands and thousands of tests into it, so we can map out the results, and you can see how you stack up compared to the rest of the data set. From there, we're able to reverse engineer optimum and reverse engineer, okay, what's working for one person, what's correlating to success, what's correlating to the upper percentile of great results, and what works for them might work for you. You might have to tweak it for the context of your operation, but we can learn from bulk data sets, and that's some of the value that we bring to the table. So tracking organic matter and all that stuff too. This one was the water extractable organic carbon, the liquid carbon that's being pumped down in the soil, building up organic matter over time. With all these carbon programs and stuff, right now, they only focus on the solid, stable organic carbon that's in the soil. That stable organic carbon can be quantified with a dry combustion organic carbon analysis. It's not crazy expensive. You can get them out of a variety of different labs. And it's on average, though, the carbon that they want us to build up is 58% of your organic matter. Okay, so as you build organic matter, 58% of that is the stable carbon that the current carbon markets are wanting to pay for. But what we need to be focused on is carbon that's in solution, carbon that's cycling, and a little bit more holistic, because carbon is actually the most important element to grow corn. And besides water, carbon is often our most limiting nutrient to produce yield, which is kind of crazy. A side story on that. I was saying we can quantify biological activity. Those microbes breathe off CO2. And our corn crop, the 3 most important elements to grow crops is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. I was told that it was NPK, but it's actually carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbon from CO2, oxygen from that CO2, but also from H2O, water. That's where the hydrogen and the oxygen comes from. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, the most important elements to grow crops. And actually, the human body is 18% carbon. Now, you can't get carbon credits, especially if you're like me and jabbering this much, and I'm exuding way more carbon in the atmosphere than what I'm pulling back down in. But as those microbes breathe off CO2, it goes up into the atmosphere, and we need to capture that. And the plant was designed to get its carbon from the soil. That's why God put the stomata on the underside of the leaf. It's not supposed to get it from up here. It's supposed to be getting it from down in the ground. I think as we're talking at our table, we were talking about how do we drive yield and how do we push this stuff further? Well, the most limiting element, as long as we got the water and got water balance, have drainage, have oxygen in the system, the next big thing is carbon. And if we're not going to have as much of it up here because it's all getting captured, we better get it locked into our soils today so we can continue to be competitive, get that carbon to actually cycle correctly, but cycle between the soil and the stomata, cycle back through the plant where that plant can pump it back down to feed those microbes and continue to do this again and again and again. While at the same time, cycling nutrients and improving water and what have you. We do make all the variable rate fertilizer recommendations and stuff like that. Now, with the couple samples you guys are getting, like we'll show you, hey, here's what the recommendation would be based on your yield goals and stuff. Obviously, with pulling 2 samples, we're not going to have it all mapped out and stuff like this. I'm just showing you guys how I use it. I think pretty well done and probably at my time. But if you guys want to check out the platform, it's topsoil.ag, totally free. Get on there to get going and stuff, create an account, topsoil.ag. You can map out your fields, play around with some stuff. If you have existing soil data, we want to use that. Again, bring in your agronomist. I want to work with your local agronomists and stuff, and we can get them brought to the table. I think there's opportunity to utilize some of this data for the peer groups and be able to learn from each other, benchmark off each other, anonymize the data, and try to learn and utilize this information to help each other out and to leapfrog further because we've got data to produce intelligence. I was telling my table, I've been doing weekly Haney testing for the last 6 years. I do not recommend doing that. If you want to do it, it's awesome, and hit me up, and I would love to discuss. But here's just some of the results of that. I've got interns and high school kids and stuff, so they can go pull samples all the time. But what I was getting at before, okay, we got to get that water extractable carbon down in the soil, and that comes from living plants. Okay, on the left-hand side is that water extractable carbon, and the more of that liquid carbon we get into the ground, the more biological activity we get. Now, it's not every time because this is all throughout the year. Weather is going to impact this and what have you. From those weekly soil data, some of the things that we're working on now is to cross-compare all that weekly data back with the weather data. We have 40 years of weather data from USDA and the PRISM data set, so we're comparing against that, but also we have hourly weather data from our soil probes and weather stations. We've been working with Arable to get those, so I'm going to be able to really fine-tune to help with interpretation of here's the sample, we pulled it one time in the year, and we need to know how to interpret it because the weather is going to influence the results. I think this last thing. What I thought was also cool with this is biological activity on the bottom. And you see, yeah, some of those biological activities going up over 900. And then the more the biological activity goes up, the more nitrogen that we have available. This is total nitrogen in part per million. This might be pounds, I suppose. Pounds of nitrogen available. All the ones in the upper left that are kind of oddballs, well, that's from the fertilizer, from synthetic fertilizer. That throws off the general trend. But in general, the more biological activity we've got, the more nitrogen cycling that we're getting, the more nitrogen we've got out there to keep feeding our crop and be able to produce those yields and cut back. Here's some of the weekly data trends. Really interesting to see. This is that liquid carbon once again. Very consistent though, cover crop versus no cover crop. These, in that cover crop blue item there, is an average of 3 replicated samples every single week. So I've got a replicated trial that we've done with our Iowa Soybean Association, replicated cover crop versus no cover crop, and we pull a sample every week from 3 of those cover crop strips and from 3 of the non-cover crop strips. And after we get the data back, we average the cover and we average the no cover, and that's what this is mapped out. So seeing very, very consistently improved availability where we've got the cover. Now over time, again, I was showing this liquid carbon piece doesn't just go up, 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 up. Because we got the microbes there that are cycling this back through. We have to continue to keep this in the correct balance and keep feeding that soil biological system. And the more that we make it active, the more that we have to keep feeding it. This was a nitrogen one. I don't know what. This is basically 1 year. So we've got April on the left and we've got November on the right. So a full year of weekly nitrogen sampling. And of course, a couple spikes that you see there is from side dress fertilizer. Okay, so we've got a planting timing and then we got a side dress timing. But what I thought is interesting on this is seeing very consistently where we've got the cover crop, we've got better nitrogen availability. Now, that didn't happen in year 1 where I had things screwed up. This is a couple years into this program, but I thought that was really, really interesting to see that coming of that consistent, better nitrogen availability. But I think that's it. I got a bunch of old pictures and stuff in here too. It's kind of fun. That's a different talk. Like I said, I got like 150 slides in here, but any quick questions on that? The key thing, like I said, is going to be Stephanie's got the info. Let's keep in touch. I think I'd shared my info before. And again, bring in your local folks that can help and utilize this opportunity really to gather data about your operation and figure out how to go and implement. Data is not going to solve all your problems. Cover crops aren't going to solve all your problems. But all of this stuff I think can really help and really improve. I know it's massively helped us. Really improved our profitability, and I think brings a ton of opportunity. And it sounds like, from what I've heard and talking, it sounds like it is a great next step for many of you in the room, and awesome opportunity to get it for free. Yes, sir.
What's the turnaround on soil testing? Do we have to go by soil testing?
Yeah.
Nice and March, or do we wait?
Good question. Okay, so there's questions on turnaround time. That's 6-7 days. Pretty quick. Yep, pretty quick. So now it's going to depend. I mean, if we're taking it like to Brookside down the road, okay, we might be able to drive it there, might be able to get it kind of quick. But usually I'm mailing them and stuff, so usually it's get them mailed. I like to pull the samples in the early part of the week, like pull them on Monday, Tuesday, get them in the mail right away. Then by the next Monday, we've got data back. And then his other question being on consistent, are we going off the calendar date or if we're going off of the soil conditions and stuff? The key thing is do it consistent to how you want to do it on a year-over-year basis. That's going to be the key. Okay, so I would suggest trying to target right around planting time to basically figure out, okay, what's happening that we're putting that corn into, and then we can utilize that data to take a look at side dress or any in-season applications or micronutrients or whatever, because I didn't really get into that. It does have all the micronutrients on it. It's got pH, organic matter, base percentages. It's got a lot of the normal stuff too. But the key is, doing it in a manner that you can be as consistent as possible year over year. But I also like I said, doing it in the fence line versus in the field so you can kind of see how the natural system works. The biggest thing that I've seen over time as well with all of our data set, I just showed some snippets here. As we improve soil health, the fluctuation goes away. It becomes much more consistent. Again, it's about mimicking Mother Nature. What's Mother Nature always looking towards? Balance. Consistency. The soil does the same thing. When it's in check, when we have better soil health, it's more consistent. Therefore, we can better predict it, we can better manage it, we can better work with that system versus if it's not healthy, if it's not there, it fluctuates a lot. Just like in our human health. If you're really healthy, you stay pretty much consistent all the time. Your weight doesn't fluctuate. You stay healthy all the time. It's if you're not necessarily very healthy, they're more susceptible to diseases, to issues. Your blood pressure or your heart rate and stuff might change more often and stuff like that. Now, what Haney jokes about with this test, though, in a weekly basis, it's fluctuating a lot. And that's important. If it didn't fluctuate, that means it's dead. Just like you, if you went to the doctor on a weekly basis, your heart rate, your blood pressure, all these things, it would be a little bit different. The only way that it wouldn't be different if you went back week to week is you'd be dead, and then you got a problem. So we just have to know how to interpret that, and just like we do with human health, we benchmark it, and we say, here's the targets of where you want to be, and it's different for you than me. We're not quite the same age. I'm 28 years old. I think you're, what, like 35 or so? So, but how we interpret the results is a little bit different, and that's what we want to be able to help out on, because there is a lot of stuff here, and we can spend a lot of time. So we need to figure out if with you guys' peer group stuff, if that's going to be part of the discussions, I'm happy to be a part of it or help to do some webinars or something like that, because there's a lot of information there, and it can be pretty overwhelming. So take it in bite-sized chunks, figure out, utilize data, use all these things to directly help you to solve a problem and to be more resilient, be more profitable on your farm. Go for it, Matt. Yep, 6 inches deep. Yep, 6 inches deep. There is a program where you can do a 6-inch sample versus a 6 to 12, which is kind of interesting. So Rick Haney and Lance Gunderson and Liz Haney have developed a regen verified kind of thing where we do 0 to 6 and 6 to 12. So that's an interesting one to do it. But 6-inch samples, how I like to do it is usually about 16 cores per sample. So go and take a bucket, pull usually, just get enough cores to be representative, because this is super sensitive. So if you pull and something throws the sample out of whack, like you hit where there was that tile line and you got a bunch of clay that's up in the upper profile, or you hit a spot where there was a fertilizer spill or something like that, it's obviously going to throw the test way out of whack. So pull a bunch of cores to try to avoid some of that and get a good representative sample, mix them all together, and then when you send it to the lab, it's a normal, just small, cup or so of soil, just like any other test. But I'm sure we'll get more of the details and stuff sent out and get a to-do list kind of put together. But there's another question back here too. Or that was it? Yes.
How do you break the fields up, and how many acres per sample?
Yeah.
On field level?
Yep. So as I was showing mine, I like to do 1 per 10 acres. So when we're doing these commercially with our customers, I charge $10 an acre, and we do typically an average of 10-acre zones. Now, I'm not here to be selling or nothing, okay? You can get these from your local folks and all that. I would love to help them. That's how our software works, and we scale by working with local agronomists. That's how our system works. But I like doing 10-acre zones, but with these, and just doing 2 samples, do one from a representative, normal kind of spot in the field versus the edge of field, or 2 things that you can learn something from.
Preferably AB soils versus
I think it's going to be up to you. How do you want to use it? How do you want to learn from it? And do something where we can get some value and learn something. But overall, how we do it is we look at all the soil types, we look at the slope elevation, and we have a machine learning system that does it all for us. And then we look at the field spatial variability to determine how many zones do we actually need. So like in some of you guys' soils are super consistent, super flat, might not need 10-acre zones like I need on my more variable soils in Iowa. Some of you probably have some pretty variable fields that 10-acre zones might not be enough. We do the same thing for like our farms down in Arkansas. Arkansas, it's all tabletop flat, no variability. I don't need 10-acre zones. I can do 1 sample per 30 or 40 acres or so and be more than representative. We have a system to do that, but that's a little bit more advanced than just pulling the couple samples here today. But yes, sir.
biological in the spring or a foliar?
Yeah, so question on using biological stuff. I've been doing most of them in furrow. So we've been playing around with a bunch of different biological products and stuff, mostly in furrow with our humic and micronutrient starter fertilizer, but been doing some foliar stuff as well. The big thing as you're playing with biological products and stuff, I've done a lot of Haney testing looking at those biological products, treated versus untreated, seeing how are they cycling my nitrogen, how are they improving biological activity. It's been a really great tool to be able to learn and see, are they actually doing something more than just impacting yield? And I do those by sampling directly where the plant actually is, not just randomly throughout the whole area. Pull right around the roots itself so you can really better understand what's actually happening to the plant. One of the things that Dr. Haney has been talking a lot about is to do these samples in season and actually pull the plants and shake the soil off of the roots of the plants and test that. So you can directly see what that plant is interacting with in the soil, and you can see how that plant and that living root is impacting what's going on in the nutrient cycling.
What are you putting on your April beans? A biological in-furrow? Are you having them treated with any kind of a fungicide?
No. Naked beans, no biologicals. Yep. So question being on our soybeans going in April, nothing. Yeah. Now, I'm a couple years into this. Okay, we're a couple years into using naked beans in that manner. We've been no-tilling beans ever since 1986. We've never tilled ahead of a soybean since 1985. So it's been building up that soil into that system. If you know you've got issues and stuff, don't just not use the Olivo or whatever at the beginning if you know you got a problem. Get it built up over time, then you can start pulling that stuff away. But for us, it's been, I've got the biology there because I've quantified it, and we've seen that we've more than tripled our biological activity in our soils in just the last couple of years. And so now I've got enough good guys built up that we don't have to have the seed treatments and fungicides. And that fungicide is going to be the same type of thing, as the insecticides. That fungicide, it's keeping the pests out, but it's probably hurting a lot of your beneficials too. So it's all about balance here and about weaning yourself off of these kind of things over time. But it takes experimenting.
In there, I didn't hear exactly on, when you use a biological, it's best to not have your seed treated because that might hurt the biological.
Yeah. So question there on as we're using biologicals, how's that going to interact with the seed treatments and stuff? And yeah, for us, we've been trying to get rid of them. So trying to get rid of the seed treatments, get rid of the insecticides, the fungicides, that they're tools, and sometimes they're needed tools, especially at the beginning of this journey. Don't just cut everything right away. It's a bad idea. But over time, those tools are going out there. They are not selective for just the bad guys. They're going to interact with everything and potentially impede your crop's ability to interact with that biological product or with the natural biology that you're building in your soil. So I think over time, we do need to keep cutting them back. We're not fully there. We still got some of them on our corn, but on the beans, completely naked beans, and that's worked really well by planting them green and let the cover crop protect them. How else we doing? Go for it, guys.
You're standing on, say, a cover crop row. Your Haney sensor, you're going to be doing all the light work and everything. Should you be planting right on that cover crop row?
So the question being like, do we plant direct on the cover crop row or not? Couple thoughts on that, I suppose. So for our operation, my cover crops aren't necessarily in a row. They kind of are, but it's a 7.5-inch row, and usually we're planting on an angle, and I don't really have much of a row to deal with. And usually we plant, if we're doing soybeans, typically we'll plant the cover crop on like a 3-degree angle to chop up the corn stalks a little bit, then maybe plant the soybeans on a 3-degree angle back the other way, and then harvest straight. But that's 7.5-inch, so that I'm not really able to plant on the rows anyway. With corn, I still like planting on a bit of an angle and then planting the corn straight. Now, it's light rates of cover crop. I don't have a major row to plant on. And the biggest thing if you are in rows, if your cover crops are in 15 or 30-inch rows or something like that, I don't know that I like planting directly on the row because of how it's going to interact with my planter and potential issues with getting that seed to soil contact, getting that seed in the ground the way that I want it to. I'd be okay with maybe planting just adjacent to the row, plant a couple inches over, something like that. But on ours, we're typically cover crop on a bit of an angle, my planter going through it. So then, I'm allowing for that precision planting system to work correctly, to adjust itself on the fly. But Yeah, okay, yeah, so good question. Okay, so on the soil sampling itself, okay, so I was talking before on sampling directly in the row for in-season analysis in testing like with biological products and such. If it's right before planting or when we don't know exactly where the row is going to be, I like to sample from all throughout the row. Now, again, this is going to be based on the context of your system. If you're a strip till, sample from right within the strip. That's what we care about. That's where your nutrients are. That's what we want to quantify. If it's all just no-till, if it's all more consistent, or if you don't want that strip to cause the results to be really high, what I like to do is split the row into eighths of the row and sample from each eighth of the row twice. So I've got my 16 cores, and I've got a system to sample from throughout the row and aggregate those together to get a more consistent result of the entire soil. But again, it's back to like, how do you want to use the results? And we can chat on that for your farm. There's a couple other ones. Yeah, go for it.
Earlier when you said that, like, you plant trees, and then you kill it, say, within a couple of days, I think it's 72 hours. Then you say you kill like corn grasses with it, and side grasses the beans.
Yeah.
How long do you let it grow, like, after you get your foot in the morning?
Yeah. Okay, a couple different things there. Yeah, I appreciate you making me clarify. Okay, on corn, I like planting green, and my rule of thumb is kill it within 48 to 72 hours of planting. And that can be just before or just after, but it works easiest to plant corn into a green growing cover crop because it rips correctly. You don't get hairpinning. It's not a nasty, stringy mess out there. Like when it's a yellow cover crop, that's when it's really bad. And you guys have heard the horror stories, and that's where we get wrapping and all this stuff. So I like planting green and then terminate it soon after planting, 48 to 72 hours. In my experience, I don't necessarily like going and killing it right away because that cover crop just got ran over and it can be kind of torn up and it can be in kind of defense mode. We need that cover crop to be reactivating so that we can spray it, it can take in the herbicide correctly and get a good consistent kill. So that's why I don't say 24 hours, I say 48, 72. Now, we've been getting more aggressive. On our farm, we are now waiting 10 to 14 days after planting corn, but my rule of thumb is plant and then get it another couple days later. On soybeans, we plant green and then we wait like 6 weeks after planting on the soybeans. Not on corn. Do not do that on corn. That's a bad idea. Corn doesn't like the competition. On soybeans, it's where we get really aggressive and get that massive cover crop that then side dresses my soybeans. But Stephanie, one more, yeah. And my info, Stephanie's got all my stuff too. This is going to be an interesting project and one I think that's got a lot of potential, but I've been working on this test for 7-8 years, and I still have a lot to keep learning with it. All of us do. So we'll learn together. One more? Yeah, go for it.
So when you're planting greens in corn, let's say, like for instance, this year, you go to a cover crop, and it's first of June. And so how do you handle that with the cover crop?
Yeah.
This fall,
Yeah. If it's getting really big like that, that's where it's, okay, maybe we do have to go in and kill it early that we know, okay, it's getting into late May, into June. We got to get this stuff killed because we don't know when we are going to get out there to plant. Okay, get it killed, but know that if you're killing that cover crop and it's this big, you ain't planting corn for at least 2 weeks after doing that. Of having that mat out there, it's way easier to plant into a cover crop that's like this than ones like this. Way easier. And the wrapping and all this kind of stuff. So if we're going to do it like that, or if it gets really late into the season, I'd be looking at scrap the corn and go to beans, double crop it, harvest that rye or something like that. We can do the relay cropping thing still, go into plan B. Or, like I said, get it killed, let that stuff work its way all the way down, and then we can plant corn into it when it's crispy and completely dead. But just know that it's not going to be soon after. Now, we planted corn into rye that was this big this year. And Dad was freaking out, man. Like, he is freaking. But we planted corn into that cover crop and was able to get away from it because we're using light rates. The light rate of rye, where for us, a head of corn, it's like 35 pounds of rye. Yeah, so light. So then, yeah, it's big and tall, but it's not that much that we can't get it still planted into. You probably got to adjust the trash rippers. Might have to get rid of them and just use the disc openers and just plant into it. Get rid of, like, I don't know what your closing system is, of course. Might have to adjust some of that on the planter. Up the in-furrow a little bit, get it killed. I would add extra 32% in or 28% in with the burn down herbicide because you got a lot of carbon out there now. So we got to balance out that carbon to nitrogen ratio. So I'd be looking at, we got to kind of front load a little bit because all that nitrogen's tied up in that cover crop. It's going to come back later. So just move some of that nitrogen that you might be applying later in season, put it on more up front. All right. I better stop or else we could keep going all day. But appreciate it. Hit me up anytime. And thanks for having me here today, guys.
Okay, so we have a few things that we're going to do before we leave. So just a little bit more information about these Haney soil tests. You are going, after you fill out your evaluation, as you're walking out the door, Julie and Brent have your certificates. They're numbered. There's a place for your name on them, and it says instructions at farmeradvocatesforconservation.com. Right now, there are no instructions there, but by mid-January, you will receive an email from me letting you know. So if you'll be getting the email from the email that you signed up and registered with. So if you didn't get like a reminder email about this event from me, then you might want to talk to me and make sure I have your correct email. You'll be getting an email from me that will say, you know, thanks for coming. This is the specific instructions, and you'll be able to also access the video of Mitchell that he just gave here on the website, along with specific instructions like some of the highlights of the things that Mitchell said today and any other things you need to know. And even more importantly, there'll be instructions about what you'll need to do once you get your results, how you'll work with combination of Matt and Mitchell and your nutrient service provider to really understand those results and be able to use them. Does that make sense? And does anyone have any questions about this Haney soil test? It's a journey we're all going on together to try to figure out what they mean and how to do them.
Maybe speak to the data privacy kind of stuff and all that too. I didn't.
Oh, okay, yes. So you will be getting it's a free trial from Topsoil, which is Mitchell's product that you'll be able to see how it works and how you'll be able to use that to interpret your results. What the soil tests that you do, I guess they are private. I mean, the Nature Conservancy or no one else is going to see them. You'll see them. Mitchell will see them. There'll be, if you want Matt to be involved or your nutrient service provider. So
that's what I was going to say. That TNC is paying for it, and they've got the grant money and stuff to pay for it, but they don't necessarily see the results. You guys own the data. It's your results. You get to do with it what you want. We'll help you to learn from it, but it is really important that this is your stuff, and you can share it with who you want to. The TNC won't necessarily, they don't get it, and we just have it in our system for you to be able to access it. That's it.
Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, Randall asked me before I'll come over to you, Randall. He wants to quickly talk about some events that are happening that you might be interested in.
All right, everybody's interested in educational opportunities, and the first one that I'll mention is the Conservation Tillage Conference. That is March 14th and 15th at Ada. We hold it there every year at Ohio Northern University. And our keynote speaker this year is David Hula. Most of the farmers here will recognize him for his outstanding corn yields. He has the record of 616 bushels per acre. Now, if you come and listen to him, I don't expect that you will be growing 600 bushels to the acre, but the point is you might increase it by 25 or 50 bushels per acre. So we'll have him, and he'll be there also for 2 hours, just Q&A. The opportunity to come and learn there, Nathan. The other one, and of course you heard from Jeff a while ago, Jeff Dooling is hosting our Ohio No-Till Field Day on August the 17th at his farm. And we hope we'll have a great program there. I've been making notes and adding things to the program today. I just sent an email to Gabe Brown to see if he will be our main speaker there. Talking about infiltration, I heard that 13 inches of rain in 22 hours and it all infiltrated. So that's worth listening to if we get him there, Jeff. Most of you know David Brandt. He hosts a field day every year in April. It will be April the 5th. And all this is in coordination with the Ohio No-Till Council. The website for the Conservation Tillage Conference is ctc.osu.edu, and the registration is open. You can also sign up to get a room at the inn at ONU if you want to. The website for the Ohio No-Till Council is ohionnotillcouncil.com without no hyphen in the no-till. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall. So I should also note that the Nature Conservancy puts out a monthly email that lists all of the relevant events, including the ones that Randall just talked about. So if you signed up for this meeting, you will also be signed up for our monthly email unless you tell me otherwise that you don't want to be. So let me know. If not, you'll be getting an email from us with events that we're hosting along with other partners. If you're hosting any events or know about any events, okay, if you're hosting any events and you want them on our list, let us know.
If you want to take a field trip to Iowa, we just, at the casino, Jeremiah's coming. You could ride with Jeremiah and talk about this stuff the whole way there. But we just hosted our Big Soil Health event last week with Liz Haney, Russell Hedrick. Had about 425 people at that one. We'll do our summer event is June 5th and 6th. We'll be doing some like presentations, stuff like this. But then we will be doing stuff out at our farm as well. But so June 5th and 6th. And then was going to mention too with some of Nathan's talk also, the Fieldwork podcast I had on the link. Fieldwork podcast is produced by American Public Media. We did some good stuff on the farmer mental health one, and then of course a lot on conservation too. So check that out as well.
Okay, thanks. So these all sound like really good things to get together with your peer groups and kind of plan to attend together, which is another thing. These peer groups that you're sitting at your tables, you might be getting an email that says, hey, this peer group plans to meet on such and such date at such and such location. And those are things that we want you to give us feedback from. So say you get that email and you're thinking, oh gosh, this sounds amazing, but I can't do that date, or there's no way I'm going to travel that distance. Then please give us that feedback, because we might, be able to accommodate your needs, do Zoom, whatever you need. Okay, so the very last thing is evaluations. So the farmer tables, the farmer advocates have a QR code there. So if you have a smartphone, get out your smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, raise your hand, because you're going to get a paper evaluation. Okay, so Julie has them and Robin has the... If you do have a smartphone, then you just open your camera to the camera setting, and it's like you're taking a picture of this image, and it will take you to the website that you need for the evaluation. And you're really answering questions about kind of this experience with this farmer advocate, so it's kind of like a short time period. No. Raise your hand if you have questions. For the resource professionals, you're evaluating, for the feedback that you give us, if you could kind of give some feedback to your facilitator now just about anything that you would want changed, and we'll get some written evaluations from you too, but give some verbal feedback to your facilitator, please.